Sentencing Reform, Real Solution for the State of Ohio, Part 2 out of 2. So what I want to speak here about is basically the fact that this sentencing reform is a real solution to Ohio's ballooning corrections budget. Present overcrowding is the underlying cause of Ohio's bloated correction budget. The state prison's population has quintupled since 1975, but while prison overcrowding is obviously bad news for the Ohio taxpayer, it is good news for MTC, CCA, and other private prisons companies operating in the state. The idea that privatizing any more of Ohio's already overcrowded prison will help reverse this overwhelming burden of the state treasury, contrary to the nature of prisons for profit. The prospect is simply releasing massive numbers of prisoners back into society or changing sentencing laws so that fewer convicts are imprisoned, and it raises legitimate public safety concern. However, the current policy of harsh sentencing and prison overcrowding results in 60% of Ohio prisoners being incarcerated for low-level, non-violent offenses. Sentencing reforms that are carefully designed and correctly designed and implemented will basically save taxpayers dollars to improve public safety, whereas increased privatization will do the opposite on both fronts. The legislation introduced during the 129th Ohio General Assembly presented a clear first step towards criminal justice reform in Ohio. One of the central innovations of this proposed legislation was to increase credit earned program. Unlike traditional time off for good behavior, where inmate sentences were reduced simply because they did not misbehave while serving their time, earning credit allows the inmate to shave time off of his or her sentences by successfully participating in education, vocational training, penal industries employment, or other treatments within the facility. The maximum time off the inmate can earn under the legislation would be 8% of the sentence. So basically, there was Ohio's Buckeye Institute that estimated that the earned credit provision would eliminate the need for 1,270 beds, which will result in an annual saving of $5.48 million for the state of Ohio. 33 states, just for the information, have earned credit laws on the books. And the Community Correction Act passed by the state of Ohio in 1979 established basically a system of prisoner diversion program, and in 2008 more than 5,500 offenders were diverted into community-based correction facilities, CBCF, which are dormitory-style residential facilities that receive capital and operations funding from the state. CBCF offers basically such rehabilitative programming as drug treatment, education, and job training, and the typical length of a stay on these facilities is 6 months. The Ohio Criminal Sentencing Commission has determined that CBCF saves taxpayers money because short periods of confinement and reduced recidivism rates when compared with prison. Other notable features of the bill include a provision that revises other penalties and eliminates sentencing disparity between different type of felonies. The definition of escapes applies to prisoner on supervised release. So both of these reforms correct the excesses of failed tough-on-crime policies that have fueled the costly explosion in prison population in Ohio and nationwide over the past generation. The majority of Ohio prisoners are incarcerated for low-level, non-violent offenses, and if only a fraction of those prisoners were diverted into treatment programs, for example, Ohio's taxpayer would already be saving millions, but mandatory sentencing laws prevent this from happening. Likewise, many prisoners and parolees are reincarcerated for the crime of escape simply because of honest mistakes or misunderstandings that they have absconded supervision. The new escape provision would allow, within the sentencing reform, the adult parole authority to utilize various sanctions at their disposal, thus avoiding the new felony charges, and would eliminate the need for more beds, thus creating additional incarceration cost savings. Finally, this bill would expand the eligibility for medical parole among geriatric inmates, elderly and infirm prisoners with serious medical conditions. That is basically rarely if posed serious threats to public safety. So the provision would give parole boards the option of committing these inmates to nursing homes in lieu of releasing them. So basically, the solution for the state of Ohio will be to focus onto the sentencing reform as the real solution that can move the state ahead in time and basically save the states of Ohio's budget. Vera Institute of Justice found that between 1999 and 2007, in this framework, the number of people 55 or older in a state federal prison grew up to 76.9%, and that prisons spend about 2 or 3 times more incarcerating geriatric individuals than younger inmates. Removing the inmates from prison system could significantly reduce inmates' health care costs without posing any substantial risk to public safety. Studies on parolee recidivism find the probability of parole violation also decreasing with age, with older parolees that is least likely to be reincarcerated. During the fiscal year 2010, the ODRC spent $225,829,929 in medical costs, which is the equivalent that have seen 39 states have laws providing for medical parole. So reform like this would only work if they implement correctly, and Ohio will have to put forth clear criteria to guide the selection of inmates who will participate, provide adequate post-release supervision of those inmates who do participate into a coordinated statewide system of administrating the alternative sentencing program. By doing thus, Ohio will be able to focus supervision resources on those people who pose the greatest danger to the community and systemize how people are assigned to service their community, which maximizes the value of these scarce program slots. All of these sentencing reforms save the taxpayer money by reducing the number of inmates occupying prison beds in Ohio at any given time. These reforms, because of the fact that they are directly cut onto their profit margins, threaten to put them out of business. So the more a state privatizes prison system, the less control and authority it will have to implement this reform. True sentencing reform requires statewide coordination and a common set of central guidelines about inmate classification that private prison operators would have a natural economic incentive to resist. Privatization, therefore, is not a sensible component of a package of cost-saving reforms to address a budget crisis. It will likely offset any savings derived from sentencing reforms and other budget balancing measures. Thank you for listening.